And we have liftoff. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We are the Leeds African Communities Trust, and we are delighted to be hosting this session where we will be talking about end-of-life planning, what that looks like, what are the things that we need to know in terms of that kind, planning end of life and thinking about, sorry, just give me a minute. Yeah. And thinking about all the considerations for yourself, for your loved ones, for people you know. There is a lot of information out there, and sometimes we don't know how to sift through it. Now, when it comes to talking about end of life, it's something that is considered by some people to be un-African. We shy away from talking about these kind of things because sometimes people think you're calling death upon yourself, which is not really true. But traditions die hard, can take time to die out or to change. It takes quite a lot of time to change culture. But we know, especially as a result of COVID-19, that end of life is a reality we all have to deal with at some point or another. And for us, especially in the diaspora, living so far away from home, there are things we do not know. There are many processes, many procedures we may not be may not be aware of. And sometimes what happens is that these things come, we are unprepared for them, and therefore we struggle through. We make the wrong choices. We end up spending money we didn't need to spend, and that sort of thing. So today we are very, very pleased and privileged to have award-winning funeral directors, an author, a coach, and other people who will share their experiences with us. Thank you so much. We have a panel of 3, and we also have a very, very special guest who will be sharing her inspiring story with us and challenging us and showing us why it is important for us to have this conversation. So my name is Dr. Kendi Gwantai, and I am the president of the Leeds African Communities Trust. I would like to thank all the trustees who've worked very hard behind the scenes to put this together. And I would like to now hand over to one of those trustees who is actually our communications director, and that is Lucy Ndlovu. So Lucy will take us through this session. As you go along, please remember you can put your questions or comments in the chat box. Make sure you share to all so that we can all see them. And I will draw the attention of the panelists to those questions, and we will try to answer as many as we can. This is a conversation, remember. So, be as interactive as you can be. So thank you very much for that. And over to you, Lucy.
Thank you, Kendi. Thank you to everybody who's joining us. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to everybody who's taken the time to join us. It's a lovely day outside, but you've taken the time to join us to learn, and that's the main objective of this webinar today, is to educate ourselves, is to inform ourselves, in a topic that, like Kendi said, we do not want to talk about. This is something that sometimes we shy away from only because we feel we might not be able to handle the information that comes our way. But it's important, something we'll all go through, something we'll all be touched by. So it's important for us to be able to understand the topic of bereavement, to be able to understand how do we support people who've been bereaved, and to be able to understand the process, especially for us who are from the diaspora, from Africa, from the Caribbean. It looks very different culturally when you're back home than it does here, and it can get quite confusing. And thank you so much for your time. So what I'll do is, the first thing we should do is I will start with introducing the speakers today. And I would love for them to introduce themselves. They will do a better job of it than I will, if I'm honest. So if I can start with Peter, please. Is Peter there? All right. Before Peter, if Peter is struggling to come on, can I start with, then can I move on to Xina?
Hello, everybody.
Hi there, Xina.
I'm Xina Broderick, and I am one of the 3 owners and directors of Gooding Funeral Services. We are an award-winning funeral parlour, and we have been open since 2007. We've been serving the community in Leeds, West Yorkshire, and we've done funerals as far afield as London. We've done funerals in Nottingham, Bradford, Manchester. So we have travelled in order to do funerals. A little bit about myself. I am, like the other 2 funeral directors, the other 2 business partners, I'm very community focused. I am co-chair of Leeds Bereavement Forum. I am chair of Mill Hill Chapel in Leeds, and I help behind the scenes with things like Friends of Potter Newton Park and various other things, and I do support and feel quite loyal to Leeds African communities as well. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm also a trained executive coach, and my area of specialism is ambitious mothers.
Okay, thank you so much, Xina. I'll then move on to Peter, and you can, for those who can see, the last names are kind of the same. There's a clue there, I think.
Yes. Names are very similar. So Xina and I are husband and wife. We run the business together along with Gay. So we run Gooding Funeral Services. I'm a funeral director. My background is in community work, youth work. I've also had a short stint as a caterer, a taxi driver. I've done lots of different things, but my sort of main trade now is in the funeral industry. So I'm a funeral director. I also specialize in repatriation. So that's overseas repatriation and national repatriation as well. I know there's a lot of people who are sort of quite interested in repatriation. Things have changed, obviously, with COVID. Things have changed in terms of the different countries that people can be repatriated to, and there's lots of different regulations that have come into place at the moment. But we try to keep on top of what's current. So I'm very, very passionate about people planning for their end of life. It's something that people should talk about. It's something that we don't, as Africans, we don't talk about enough. Because I think sometimes, as Kendi said, feels though we're calling death onto us, but that's not the case. I think a planned end of life can be a good end of life.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for that. We will get to that topic shortly. Last of the 3, sorry to say, not last but not least, is Gay. So please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Gay Gooding Kershaw. I am one of the 3 directors of Gooding Funeral Services. Just to build on what Xina said, the business is a family-run, independent funeral firm. It was set up by Xina and my father, Peter's father-in-law, Hugh Gooding, in 2007. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2012, and that's how we've come to own and run the business now. So it's always been a community-focused business, and we are all very proud and feel very, very passionate about working within our community, serving our community. My background is I've worked as a civil servant, I've worked in high-end luxury goods, and I've also been an educational professional. That was the last sector I worked in prior to coming into working for Gooding Funeral Services. My role with our firm, our family firm, is very much to do with the social media side of things. I also do a lot of the business planning, some aspects of strategy, business strategy, client services, client care, and also much of the just general, I'd say the graphics, the interiors, the rebrand, the logo, all the sort of creative side of things. That's me. And when people communicate with us on social media, you're communicating with me, I'm responding, I do all that side of things. So I represent the online face of the side of the business.
Right. Thank you, Gay. And our next speaker is going to be Priya. You just introduce yourself. Oh, there you are.
Okay, I'm not on mute. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Priya Umbu. Where do I start from? Well, I have worked in the banking sector, and that's where I first started my career after my master's degree. And then I have also worked in the civil service, NHS Digital, and that was actually partly because at the time my mom was already in hospital and I just wanted to feel like I was adding and helping in some way. And then after she passed away, I took a break for about a year because I needed it. Probably explain why rest is important too for your mental health. And now I am with Sky Comcast, which is obviously in the media and technology side of things. I am the squad lead for a team of about almost 16 testers, developers, working in the background to make sure that the analytics and things of that nature are being prepared. We're able to use that skill set to help analyze things like people watching, viewing, what they're watching. So people like us are the ones in the background doing all of that. And I think my identity, I don't necessarily see myself as oh, I'm Priya, I'm Black, or I'm African. I just see myself as I'm Priya, I'm a human being, and I'm a child of God. So I identify very much so with my being a Christian, my religion, more than anything else. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Priya. So we will kick off now, and just so you know, you're going to be talking first. Sorry, Priya, you just finished, and then I'll just come in. And I think before you do that, one of the things I wanted to talk about is September is known as Self-Care Month. It's something, I work in communications, and we run campaigns, national campaigns or international campaigns every month. And so when we decided to have this webinar in September, I thought it would be quite important to have it then, because self-care is not just about you, it's also about your family and what's happening around the world. And this is something that is needed right now. If there's ever been a time where we need self-care, is right now. So to kick us off, I'll have Priya, if you just share your experiences. As I said, please just keep it short for maybe another 10 minutes so that we can have a very fruitful discussion. The format of this webinar today would be, we will talk about a topic, and then after topic, we will have a discussion. The reason we're doing that is because it's a very loaded topic. And so we want everybody to be able to understand the topic, then discuss, then we move on to another topic, just so that we get it all in, because I think, myself included, I lost my dad in Feb of this year, and myself included, this is something I'm sure most people need, and I will learn a lot from this as well. So I'll pass it on to Priya. Thank you. I'll call you Lady P, that's what it says there.
Yeah, that's fine. So I guess I'm going to try and summarize everything in 10 minutes and by highlighting key things, because obviously one can't really go into much detail with this type of things. But my mum was a single parent, and I'm an only child, just to give you some sort of background. So for me, she was my best friend, my mom, my brother, my sister. She was pretty much my everything. So when she had a stroke, obviously we never planned for that or thought that would ever happen. That was a shock. And I was in my early 20s. We swapped roles at that point, basically. I became the carer, everything. And at the same time, I think I was about to start my master's. I remember saying, I'm not going to resume. And I think her stroke, interestingly, happened August, and school was about to start September. And I remember saying, there's no way I can do this while she's in hospital, so I'm going to, you know, defer it. Fortunately or unfortunately, she got out of her coma, and the only word she said was school, school, school. And my uncle's like, you're going to school, whether you like it or not. And I'm thinking, oh crap. At the time I was down south, and my master's degree was going to be in Yorkshire. So that was how I got into Yorkshire. And it was going to be Bradford University School of Management. And I was like, how am I going to cope being in Bradford, as well as having to go down to Luton, which is where she was in terms of the hospital. And to be honest, I didn't see how that was going to be humanly possible, because it was a full-time master's as well. But luckily as well, or I don't know, time just has a way of making things work for you. And this is where opportunity, I'm talking about these things because I think sometimes we also see how something might be impossible, but sometimes what God wants for us, and whatever you believe in, if you don't believe in God, what the universe wants for you is to believe in yourself. So at that time, I didn't realize the strength that I had inside of me to be able to do it, because I did do it, and I even had a distinction at that, right? So it's possible, but with help. And that was, I think, the universe's way of getting me to start learning to ask for help, because that was something my mom wasn't good at, and I sort of picked up on that early on. I didn't know how to ask for help, and I think it's somewhat of a black thing, actually. We tend to hide those things, thinking, oh, let's not let anyone know, let's protect the family's name, you know, things, you know, you hear statements like that. But I was beginning to learn that if I was going to be able to do both, to be a daughter and be a carer, and to also finish well the school that she clearly wanted me to finish, I needed to also know when to start asking for help. And this is where, if you ever find yourself for any reason in this sort of situation, please tap into the healthcare workers. They're very good. Very experienced. The nurses became my best friends, to be honest, almost like an extended family. And I think that's something, don't be afraid or ashamed to speak. I would take time out, buy cake, buy cards, say thank you every now and then, you know, because I was trying to show that I appreciated them being there for me, to be able to at least look after her while I was studying or when I wasn't around, right? And there's something about being appreciative of people. It goes a long way. It builds relationships, and that's the first support I would like to mention, you know, besides church, friends and family. The healthcare workers became family for me. And at that time, I also realized there was something my mom, you know, felt she was going to do later. She thought she had enough time. So that's another thing. We don't know when we're going to go. So we need to always be prepared. And that was a lesson learned for me even before she passed away. And because of that, I said to myself, it hit me, because I'm like, what if I go before her? I'm the only one she has. So in theory, she wouldn't have any next of kin there to look after her. And that was in my early 20s, 22, I got life insurance. Not because I was married, not because I had children, not because I had anyone. It was because I was covering her, and it was her name on there, you know. And to my friends, they're like, what's wrong with this girl? You crazy? I'm like, but truly, what if I go? I need to know that she's fine, especially financially. And yes, because I was quite young, I didn't have savings, I didn't have all of that. So I thought, if I can't have savings, I can at least afford to pay 30 or so pounds every month to make sure that she gets a lump sum of, you know, over £200,000, right? If it was me who went first. I'm mentioning this because before you start talking about end of life planning, I think you need to start talking about present life planning too, and that's what life insurance, you know, is.
Thank you. Thank you. You're going to come back. I know you have a lot to say. You're going to come back, but what you've actually said leads me quite nicely to Peter, who is going to talk about maybe even present day planning, which is something maybe you were not prepared to talk about, Peter. I think we'd put it down for end of life, but we'll start with present day because it all links in, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And before I say anything, I'll just like to say thank you, Lady P, for sharing your experience. It was a really, really powerful story, and thank you, very, very moving. So thank you for sharing. In terms of present day planning, I think that people should actually start to have the conversation, because not everyone is guaranteed to get old. And what I say to everybody when I speak about end of life planning and end of life care, I say that there's, you know, I'll tell everyone in the audience that I've got some bad news, that we're all dying, and we are one day closer today than we were yesterday. And it's something that we should have present in our mind, and we should think about, and we should plan for, and then get on with our lives. So in terms of life insurance, I think that you've made a very, very good point there. People, it is a way of both guaranteeing an income for the people that are left behind, and it's also a way of leaving a legacy. And actually, life insurance, particularly when you're a young person, isn't all that expensive, but it can provide for those who would be left behind. So I think that you've made a very, very good point there in terms of life insurance. It's, you know, and there are people in our community. I believe Sam Lee, he sells life insurance. You know, I'll just seek someone out, talk about life insurance, talk about how you can protect you and your loved ones and your family and your assets, so that if anything were to happen, you know, I mean, for example, I went cycling this morning. I cycle usually most weekends. You know, you're out on the road, anything can happen. You just don't know. So, you know, you may turn a corner, there's a number 33 bus, and unfortunately that's the end. And we cannot sort of live as though we're going to live forever and expect that we're going to live forever, because we're not, unfortunately. So, yes, life insurance is very, 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 very key. What we do at our business is we have a very small document that we send out to families who are interested in looking at their sort of end of life, and it's called My Funeral Wishes. If anyone wishes to receive one of these, send me a message. I'll post one out to you. And it's a very simple document. It just starts the conversation. It's something that we encourage families to do together around the dinner table, to say, well, okay, do I want to be buried? Do I want to be cremated? Which church do I want to go to? Do I want to go to a church? Do I want to be repatriated and have my remains flown elsewhere? These are the things that your family should know about you, even if it's written down even if it's written down somewhere on a piece of paper. This is what I want, and that's what we encourage most families to do, and then start to have the conversation. One of the things that my mother used to do was she would say things like, in jest, she would say, "Oh, I'll soon be gone." And you know, you don't want to hear that as a child. You don't want to hear that, but I think our parents, they're preparing you for a time when they're not going to be around. And I think that they're preparing you for having that conversation. You know, what are we going to do when mum's not here anymore? What are we going to do when dad's not here? You know, grandma's not going to be around forever. So I think we should be having these conversations just as a family, to say, well, okay, well, I know that, you know, Granddad was a quiet man, He doesn't want a big fuss. He doesn't want a great deal of pomp and ceremony at his service. And he's written it down. This is what he wants. Because one of the worst things that I see as a professional is when families come to us, and sometimes you've got siblings that are at war with each other. And one will be saying, well, my dad would want this, you know, a horse and carriage and a gold casket and all the bells and whistles. And then the other person would say, well, actually, no, my dad wouldn't want that. And they're having an argument because they don't know, because they never talked about it. And that's quite sad. So I would say start to have the conversation, start to, you know, talk amongst each other, amongst your family members, just even to write something down to say, look, this is what I would want. You don't have to write a will, but I would encourage you to write a will. And we do know of friendly solicitors, because not all solicitors are friendly, but we know of friendly solicitors who would help you to write a will that would benefit you and your family. So I would say, you know, you don't have to write a will, but I would say write something down to say what are your wishes toward the end of your life, because as you say, we just don't know when the end will come.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for that. I think when it comes to losing a family member, I think most people go through shock at first, even if they're unwell. My experience of my dad also had a stroke this time last year, and he stopped talking. And the shock of it is, yes, he's unwell, but I think you go through shock and denial. You go through the whole process. So by the time it comes to funeral arrangements, when he passed, you're exhausted emotionally. And then the family members are also fighting. Sometimes it's because they're in pain. You know, the pain that comes in, everybody's dealing with pain differently. I deal with it differently from my siblings, from my other siblings. And so the infighting usually is when you're preparing for the funeral, is because I'm trying to think, this is what dad would have wanted. Because maybe he told me one time this. And the other one says, oh, one time I went for a walk with my dad and he mentioned this. So it's very important, like you say, to have those conversations in the family. We don't want to have them, even now with our children. But that's the reality of it. And what I'll do now is I'll pass the discussion on to Xina. We will come back to Peter's point, unless at this point in time, sorry, Xina, sorry. Is there anybody who would like to discuss what Peter has talked about? As I said, if we do it that way, we have a discussion per topic. So Peter talked about more of end-of-life planning, obviously talked about, you know, life insurance or will, things like that. So we've got about 5 minutes or so if anybody wants to speak.
If you put your hand up, yeah, I'm more than happy to unmute you. Just let me know. But in the meantime, you mentioned this document, Peter, the funeral wishes document that you've got. Is that available online anywhere?
I think we can. I think I'm looking at Gay here. I think we have got an online copy that we can send to people.
I can certainly put together an online copy. I have a printed copy, but I don't have a PDF, but I can certainly get that together for everyone. And I can send it to you, Kendi. Yes, or Lucy.
Yeah.
Distributed.
That would be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And maybe, Lady P, you look like you've got a question or something to add to what Peter has just said.
Oh, I have a lot to say. I think where I was probably going to go to next was I was going to touch on the fact that on the day, interestingly, the day I called the funeral insurance was the day my mom passed. So I didn't get to even put that in place. And then she passed. But there is funeral insurance, which I would say once you're the age of 18, please just get funeral insurance. Pretty much every bank offers it, not just funeral homes. I was on the phone that morning and they were like, oh, it's a Saturday, can you call on Monday? And my mom died on a Saturday, so she died by 7 p.m. that day. And I was like, oh my God. Thankfully I save a lot, so that kind of helped me. But it could have been way better, right? If I had put that in place. And the funeral insurance, with the funeral home I used, they offered things like, you know, having to pick things like the song in advance, the flowers, everything. And I personally would say that period where I had to do all of that for my mom is possibly the most traumatic time of my life. And I still feel trauma from having to see her body in the way I saw it, and having to be the one to pick the coffin. And what I can say is, if you can save your loved ones from having to go through that extra trauma, because that's the only word I can use to describe that, is please do it, just so that we can focus on actually grieving. Because I didn't grieve till about 3 months after burying her, actually. I was more or less the project manager for my mom's funeral. So when people were wondering, why is she not crying? Why is she not? It was because I was a project manager at that point. I was planning. That's what I became. I wasn't grieving. It was 3 months after that my spiral began, which was round about Christmas. So if you can do that for your loved ones, please do that. And I'm clearly going to be doing that for my future kids when that time comes. But I would say that would help us a lot, and make use of funeral homes and funeral directors, like the Goodings. You know, that's why they're there. You know, they're the experts to guide you in those kinds of journeys. But I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Lady. Oh my goodness, I totally can relate to what you've said, 100%. I'll pass this discussion on to Xina. Xina's the next topic we'll talk about is funeral planning, which carries on that way.
I just wanted to mention a couple of points on end-of-life planning, a couple of things that are really important, on top of the things that Peter said, and that's acting power of attorney for health and also for finances are really important aspects of end-of-life planning, as well as a will and as well as life insurance, if you can get those things sorted. Because, for example, Peter and I, we are a very tight married couple. He's not going anywhere, I'm not going anywhere. If anything happens to either of us, we need to make sure that we can act for the other person if they are not well. So if you have a medical power of attorney document, which we've got those things in place, then that means I'll be able to take over his aspect as a business partner in Gooding Funeral Services. I'll be able to act on his behalf legally. If he's got his mobile phone bill that needs to be sorted, I can ring and say, I'm Peter's acting power of attorney. You know, just because I'm really careful what I say about people. I don't really put illness on people with my mouth. So I might just say something like, he's in hospital having a baby right now. He's not able to deal with these things. So I would legally, have the authority to take care of those things. Don't worry, darling. I'll keep you safe from that kind of situation. But the point I'm making is, if I do not have that paperwork in, irrespective of the fact that he and I are married, the phone company will say, well, sorry, we can't deal with you. We need to deal with our customer only. The bank, you know, for the business, if they say we need 2 signatures for this check, for example, we've already got that sorted. But hypothetically speaking, if Peter was incapacitated and engaged 200 miles away in London, I could say, well, I'm signing on behalf of myself and of my husband, Peter, because I have medical and financial power of attorney. The thing for you to bear in mind, particularly for the medical power of attorney, is those documents need to be created before your loved one is ill. So if, God forbid, you're married and your husband or wife has a stroke or some sort of accident, and then you say, well, I'm his wife, let me go and sort this out. They'll say, well, we're sorry, but they can't. even if they've got a broken leg, even if they can speak, all the rest of it, if they've got something else that affects a different part of their body, which means that they physically can't get to a bank anymore, without that power of attorney, you may need to go to get a court order for every single action you want to take on behalf of that person. So we, Peter Gay and I talk from a very personal perspective, and we can say things like, Peter and I have that in order, we have our wills in order, that is our end of life planning, we've got our life insurance in order. We've also sorted our mother's medical and financial power of attorney between myself and my sister, where my mum's only children. And Peter is a signatory, Gay is a signatory. We've got everything on lockdown so that we all know what we're going to do, you know, should anything untoward happen to mummy. And we all know what we're going to do should anything untoward happen to our spouses. And I think that is a really important end of life planning aspect for you all to please consider, especially as you cannot implement medical attorneyship after the person has had some sort of illness. So please bear that in mind. I wanted to move on to funeral planning, and Lady P and Peter have said made some really important points. And Gay and I were talking just this morning about how much we miss our dad. And I know that, Lucy, for you, this is quite a recent event. For us, it's still an emotive topic because we're quite a close family, you've probably gathered. And I can say that when I think about my father and what happened to him, I will never forget the day when we were sitting in a consultancy room and the consultant said, I am sorry, it is cancer, it is inoperable, it is incurable. And I remember thinking, right, okay, so he's going to be ill and probably going to be on cancer tablets for a long time till he's really old. And I said to the consultant, well, okay, so what are you going to do to take care of my dad then? And he started saying, well, we could talk about palliative care. And I thought, palliative care, what's he on about? That thought it's a bit premature, jumping the gun a bit. And my dad sort of patted me on the arm and said, basically, pet, what he's trying to say is I'm terminally ill. And there was nothing that could have prepared me for that. There was nothing that could have prepared me for that. And even as he was saying that to me, I was denying. He must have misunderstood. And I said, he's not saying that. And I said to the consultant, that's not what you're saying, is it? And he said, unfortunately, yes, that's what I'm saying. And Lady P was talking about shock, and Lucy was talking about shock, and I felt shock. I was totally shocked. My dad was life and soul of the party, really, really charming guy. And he's sitting next to me, clearly alive. So then how then could he be dying? It just didn't compute. I could not take that in. I think just very shortly after that, Peter, by chance, thank God, he happened to be walking by. We thought he was left for the day. He'd been in the hospital. He was parked on a double yellow line and we thought he'd gone, but he managed to find parking and just happened to come back. And he looked through the window to the door in the room and smiled. And he could see clearly that I was in distress and I was like that. And he came and he said, well, what's wrong? And I said, they've just said Daddy's terminally ill. And Peter looked at my dad, and the first thing my father said was, please, please don't let my business die. Don't let my business die. And I could have been a bit miffed, actually, because, you know, that's his business. I'm there sitting there, I'm his daughter. But I understand the importance of legacy from the perspective of someone who's actually dying, and what comes to the fore from the perspective of someone who's actually dying. And that legacy was right there, close up and in front of my father's face in a way that he really would have preferred not to have happened. Fast forward, because I know I have to be mindful of time. I became my dad's primary carer, much the same as Lady P was her mother's primary carer. Daddy had an aggressive form of cancer. It was bile duct cancer, cholangiocarcinoma, very rare and very aggressive. So from the time that he was told that he was terminally ill to the time he died was 7.5 weeks. During that time, I was looking after him and looking after me and Peter's youngest son, who wasn't even 18 months at the time. Gay was in London, and she would come up like an angel and help, and really we pulled together and helped one another. And we stood firm together, and it was wonderful. But one thing that I have to say in context of this talk is I was tasked with asking Daddy what he wanted for his funeral. And I can tell you two things. The first thing is, my dad did not want to die. And the second thing is, I had no idea how to broach that topic, how to go to someone who clearly didn't want to die and say, oh, by the way, let's have a chat about your funeral. So this is how I recommend to people, please have this conversation. Don't wait until someone is very ill. It's awful doing it that way. Do it while every weighing down, heavy like weight burden on your shoulder. This is literally a deathly conversation. I had to work out how to do that. I say, please, if you take away nothing else from this talk, please take away, don't wait until someone is terminally ill to find out what they want for their funeral. My dad came in and out of hospital. I think he had 2 hospital stays. For the second stay, he didn't come back out alive. And when we were admitted for the second stay, we had to wait in a room for them to get his room and his bed ready. And there was a bed in the room that we were waiting, and it had the blood transfusion sheet covering the mattress. And I said to my dad, oh, Daddy, I like the idea of giving blood. And when I die, I want to donate all of my organs, and I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes to be sprinkled over the Caribbean Sea. And Daddy said, well, what do you want to go and get cremated for then? And I said, because I think Peter will have a hard time chucking my body over the side of the ship unless I'm actually cremated. And we had a little bit of a laugh about it, and we broke the ice. And then I was able to say, and what about you, Daddy? What do you think you would like? We never called his dad granddad, called his father Albert. They had a grave for 4. So the natural assumption for me was he'd want to go in with them. And he said, oh, no, I don't want to go in with them. No, I want to go in on my own. This was a complete shock to me because when my grandparents had died, there was a huge fuss over my grandparents having a grave for 4 so my dad could go in with him. I would have gotten that completely wrong. My dad would have been in a grave with 2 other people where he made it clear, actually, no, not only do I not want a grave for 2, I especially do not want to go in with anybody else. I want a grave for 1. And I want a funeral befitting of a funeral director. Well, that was my instruction then. We pulled out all the stops. And Daddy had a wonderful funeral. He did have a wonderful funeral. It made the papers. It was massive. He had the horse-drawn carriage. He had the New Orleans band. He had a gospel singers. He had dove release at the graveside. He had the full works. I am not confident, as well as I knew my father and as close as we were to Daddy, I'm not confident he would have had that unless I asked him the question. I would have got the burial incorrect straight off. I knew as a traditionally Caribbean people don't tend to go for cremations, so I wouldn't have thought of that anyway. But the point that I'm making here is, please just don't wait until someone's ill. Have these conversations and start with yourself. Start with what you would like. Inform your family members of what you would like, and then it's less intimidating. You don't point at your grandma's jewelry and say, who's getting that when you die? You sort of start by saying, oh, by the way, these are the things that I'd like for my son. So my sons know who I want to have the diamond out of my engagement ring, who I want to have my wedding band, and things like that. We talk about it openly, and we do make it a generational conversation too. So I am so sorry, I've run completely over time, but I hope that I have made my message clear.
Yes, you have. You really have. And for the purposes of time, obviously, we want to have this discussion. So I'll just ask Gay if there's anything she'd like to add on to, onto what you just said.
Yeah, just really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Just to say, thank Lady BP for her moving story and about her mother. I'm really sorry, genuinely sorry for your loss. It's horrible. It's just horrible when you lose someone you adore. So I'm really, really grateful for you to share that with us all. But you mentioned funeral insurance. There are two things. There's life insurance, just so that everyone knows. There's life insurance that anyone can take out at any time. And you can take it out for yourself, or you can take it out for your partner, and it, as Peter mentioned, it covers what you want to do with your home or your house or your car or your jewelry or whatever you want. That kind of covers. It's a big umbrella insurance covering your life. With regard to a funeral plan, that's slightly different, and that's what you would go to your funeral firm to get. And whichever firm you choose, you should always make sure that the funeral plan that you're going for is covered by the Financial Services Authority, so that you have some protection. It means that plan is linked to a regulated body, and you will not lose your money if you go with a funeral firm who provides a funeral plan that is FSA, linked to the Financial Services Authority. It's really important that you know that. Funeral firms are not allowed to sell funeral insurance or life insurance because we're not financial bodies, so we don't have, but we can provide funeral plans which are linked to a regulated body.
Okay, thank you.
Also, just as picking up on what Xina said, yes, with regard to making your funeral wishes with your friends and with your family, what we've done, for example, my entire family, I've got a list of what they want in terms of whether they want, right down to my children. I didn't realise that one child would never dream of being buried, just doesn't want to be buried, wants to be cremated. The other two they don't appreciate that at all. I know all their funeral songs that they want. I know all my both my parents-in-law funeral songs. I know my mum's funeral song. I know who they want to speak at their funeral. I know what they want to say. I know that some members of the family want everybody to be dressed in yellows and whites and whatever, and other people want everyone to be really miserable. They want everyone to be crying at their funeral. So, we've all made it really quite light-hearted, and we're all very open about it, so that when the time does eventually come, we more or less know what everyone wants, as Xina said, and it's not going to be a painful, difficult conversation because we've done it in a timely fashion when there was no immediate need to address that issue. Yeah. So it's more relaxed, as Xina says. It's taken a more we've done it in more relaxed circumstances. That's all. That's all I just wanted to
brilliant.
Add.
Brilliant, Gay. Thank you so much. Just before we move on to the next topic, I'd like to ask Peter a question. I think this is something that he did mention, obviously, repatriation, is that the word?
Yes, repatriation.
Yes, repatriation, and this is something you said you're involved with. But I think that the reason that's important for us here is because most of us obviously are from the diaspora, and we have people saying, if it happens to me, if I pass on in this country, I just want to go home. I want to be buried at home. And that can be costly, and that can be quite complicated. And right now in COVID, we know that things are very complicated. So maybe if you could just shed some light in terms of how it would normally look like before COVID, and also how it looks like now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, prior to COVID, we use a repatriation flight agent that were able to get current pricing and all the regulatory documents from to send someone home. There are a few documents that have to go in advance through the airline and to the receiving party. It's usually a funeral director in the country of destination, but not always a funeral director. But there are some documents that have to be administered here. For example, an out of England form, which is from the coroner's office, a form from the death certificate, a copy of the death certificate, and the deceased passport. We have to sign a declaration to say what is within the casket. So we have to sign a declaration to say that only the remains of the person who's passed away and their clothing are within the casket. And there is also a document that comes from Public Health England. If someone has passed away from an infectious disease, unfortunately, they won't be able to leave the country. But the Public Health England would have been notified if a person has died of an infectious disease. So we have to have a certificate from Public Health England to say that this person is free from infection, to say that they are clear to be able to be repatriated. And we also have to have a certificate of embalming. So if somebody does want to be repatriated, they would have to be embalmed prior to leaving the country. And embalming is a process whereby the body is made sanitized. There is embalming fluid put into the body, and it also helps to preserve the deceased as well. So they'd have to have a certificate of embalming as well. So there are 5 documents that have to go with the person who's been repatriated. That's prior to COVID. Now, there has to be a receiving agent. Now, that's usually a funeral director based in the country of destination, who will receive the documents in advance and will also have to meet the deceased at the other end to claim them from the cargo department at the airport of destination. Some countries, and I know that there was one, I can't remember which country it was, but there was a country that we sent someone home to where they didn't have funeral directors. It was families who dealt with the funerals. So they had to have a receiving agent based at the airport who was prepared to take a coffin or casket from the cargo area and return it to the family of destination. But most of the time it's to a funeral director at the other end. You have to name the person who will be collecting the deceased at the other end. That's the funeral director who will be collecting the person at the other end. And the flight is booked through the repatriation flight agent, and they're able to, as I said, they're able to give us current pricing based on because flight prices go up and down, as you probably know. So that was prior to COVID. Now, most repatriations happened quite smoothly. There was no complication. We did have one situation where we'd sent someone, and at the other end, the family were there to receive the body, but unfortunately we had some corrupt airport officials who were demanding large sums of money in order to release the body, when actually all of those fees and taxes had been paid at our end. But so that can happen from time to time, but we've only ever had one experience of that. Now, since COVID, I think there was a large lockdown in terms of the countries that were able to receive repatriated remains. I know that some of those restrictions have been lifted, but it's really on a country by country basis now. So we had an inquiry this week for someone who wanted to be sent back to Jamaica. And we know that Jamaica has just lifted its restriction on receiving repatriated bodies. So we are now able to repatriate to Jamaica. Now, it will depend on the country. So if we get an inquiry, we will just contact the repatriation agent, and they will be able to tell us whether or not that country is able to receive, or whether their borders are currently open to receive repatriated remains. Yeah. So it was locked down quite heavily. There have been some restrictions lifted now, but it's on a country by country basis.
Yeah. Okay. Quite interesting. I think we are living in a very difficult time, so everything keeps changing, and I'm sure this will change. You know, back and forth depending on what's happening with COVID. I think we will come back to that at some point, but just moving on to the next topic. Thanks, Peter, for that. I think, Xina, it's you again, you know, talking about bereavement support, and maybe if you just tie that in with abundant living somehow, so that we can look at bereavement support, and we can also maybe have a small discussion and then move on to abundant living, have a bit of discussion. We've got about half an hour, if I'm not wrong. Then we'll be able to open it up to everybody else to contribute. So, yeah.
Okay, so in terms of bereavement support, in Leeds there is Leeds Bereavement Forum, and that's literally a signposting service which I am chair of, and they have knowledge of all the bereavement support services across Yorkshire and West Yorkshire, and Yorkshire and West Yorkshire. Even though it's called Leeds Bereavement Forum, they have contacts outside of the Leeds area as well, and it's like a directory and signposting. They've got a website which I believe is leedsbereavementforum.org, but I can check and make sure that's in there for you. And they try to contact everybody every year who are connected to bereavement services. They keep it up to date, and they update a hard copy and an online directory. So for example, if like my dad, he died of cancer, I can go on the Leeds Bereavement Forum and find bereavement support from, say, Macmillan Cancer. Somebody who has lost a husband would be able to go to Leeds Bereavement Forum and find the contact details for the Widows Society, who support bereft wives. There are different categories. You can even find bereavement support for Black and African, Caribbean, whichever term you're more comfortable with. Everybody of African heritage and of the diaspora. There's a breakdown as well in the BAME section, Black and Asian minority ethnic. That's not a term I use for myself, but that's the area where it's easier to break things down. Also, what I would say is that for local organisations, particularly when I'm thinking about the African communities, and I include Caribbean in when I say that term, our churches offer support, mosques offer support, and some of our Caribbean and African associations offer support as well for bereavement. I am a certified grief recovery specialist. I tend not to do one-to-ones anymore, but signposting people who were bereft, that is a passion of mine. And moving, sort of segueing on to what Kendi and Lucy were talking about in terms of living a fulfilling life, I am very passionate about that. I know that being a funeral director feeds into my passion for that. Peter would say, yes, it's true. We every day we're dying. For me, it's more every day we're alive. So we've got to embrace that. Plan for the inevitable. Yeah, plan for the inevitable. Let's not try and kid ourselves here. That's important. And I think we can live a fuller life when we've done that, because we've not left any boxes unticked. We've left no task undone. And then we can focus on living life to a full and not having to wait until someone dies before we have that profound, jarring, shocking experience where we're like, oh my gosh, death is actually real. Don't wait for that to happen. I say embrace life now, embrace your loved ones now. And that is something that I am very, very, very passionate about. I see death is a reality for me. It's part of my professional life. And because of what happened to my dad, it's part of my private life too. When my dad died, my whole life changed. My whole life. I was an at-home mum. I had to put my son into nursery to take care of my dad. Peter was working in catering. My husband was no longer working in catering. He went full-time into the funeral business. I went full-time into the funeral business. My sister started working with me in the business. So every aspect, my private and personal and professional life changed. So I know that death can do that in a family, can have that impact in a family. Well, I'm not waiting for that. And I highly recommend that people don't wait for that. If somebody close to you or someone in your circle dies, yes, let that serve you as a true and deep and impactful reminder to live life with vim and to the fullness, but don't wait for that. Pick up on positive sayings without having to wait for death to take it seriously. Pick up on when you are inspired by something, let that impact you. Let that be your profound day-to-day experience. When you see your children, embrace them. Remember from time to time when you planned for that child. Remember from time to time when you carried that child. Remember from time to time when your wife carried the child and you were rubbing that child's belly. Remember that as well when that child winds you up. It gives you a little bit of balance so that you don't lose your head and don't lose your mind. What I'm saying is we have to, live life to the fullest, and that is something that I explore extensively as a life coach, and it definitely informs my life coaching experience as well.
Thank you, Xina. You're so right. When you said that when someone dies, it touches every aspect of your life until it actually happens. You don't realize. You feel like it's something. It's before it happens. You feel like it's something that you'll move on from, and you carry on with life as normal. That changes your life when every aspect of your life is affected, and it can be affected in a negative way. It can also be affected in a very positive way, in the sense that you kind of say, now that I know this is a reality, I'm embracing life to the full, because I know it becomes real to you as well. I just want to call on Lady P. Is she there? Lady P, there you are. I just wanted you to sort of, if you don't mind, just while we finish off, while we wrap up, and we've got a few minutes for discussion, you sort of talk about how it went for you, about, your mom and how the funeral went, and I guess where you are now and how that has changed you and how it's molded you. I'm sure it has.
So I've always been quite a even from when I was a little girl, hence why my career went into project management, and so yeah, naturally I tend to think ahead, and so I think that helped me when it came to my mom, because I went into that mode. I think the only downside was that meant my grieving process happened probably later than the average person. It was almost like it dawned on me, like, wait, I'm not gonna see her again. I'm not gonna be able to touch her again, or just give her updates on what's happening in my life. So when it comes to coping, over the years, I was able to, because I've always been active in church, that helped me. It helped me because I was able to at least speak up to people like my pastor. I was also one of the leaders in church as well. So I guess by example, I was also then speaking to people higher up as well. And I tapped into that community, that network. The Nigerian Society, the Nigerian Community Leads president as well reached out to me that period. So I also had the Nigerian community as well reach out to me that period. And I found, you know, a lot of strength in that as well, because it's a very lonely journey as well when you're grieving. And I'm sure it's not necessarily because I am, you know, my mom's only child. I think even for siblings, the experience would be individual. And so every now and then it was good to see a message from these people, a call, you know, actively being there, present. Don't be ashamed to cry if you need to cry. Don't be ashamed to just let it all out. However, I think one thing I learned pretty fast was that even though I was down, I needed to also start thinking upward, because that's what the person who had left me, my mom, would want. She wouldn't want a situation whereby she's left and then I'm now pretty much walking dead. And so that brings that conversation of speaking about legacy, you know, bringing that into your grieving process, because you will find strength in that. It might not happen automatically, but keep putting your mind on that look, this person has left and they wouldn't want me to remain, you know, at this level. They would want me to come back up and rise even above. So for me, I saw it as a baton being passed to me. And that's why you now even have the existence of Caillou Boss. My mom was a pastor, so I don't see myself as a pastor. However, you know, I knew, okay, she wants God's word to spread across, you know, and I was happy to do my part using my own skill set. So I'm quite creative, like Gay mentioned. And so I use my creative side of things. So that's where you would see things like books, shirts, things like that. And so anytime I see Caillou Boss, I smile, because I'm like, oh, mom would like that, you know, and God would like that. So it's hitting two places. So start trying to do things you're passionate about, even if it starts in your room, because I was locked up in my room for months. Start. You like music, start listening to music, put your headphones on. Just, you don't really necessarily have to go out. I didn't feel like seeing people, and I made that clear. I was like, I don't want to go out. So it took almost a year for me to start coming out to events. And if that's what you need, do that. However, don't be so isolated that no one knows how you're faring. At least have that one person that comes in to check up on you. In my case, I had a close family friend say, come to the house for 1 month. And they literally did not even listen to me because I was going to say no. And they just came and packed my stuff and followed me. So tap into your community, tap into your religion, tap into even your workplace. If you've got good working relationships with your workmates, tap into that one person that's a good friend. Because sometimes too, it's good to keep your mind busy, because if you're too idle, you might spiral into deep depression. So you don't want to get to that place, please. If you do find yourself, because I'm not saying you should be Superman or Superwoman, please speak to counselors. They're out there. So I knew I had this. I didn't even get to use it, but I knew. So go to your GP. People don't know this. You go to your GP. They're called general practitioners for a reason. And one of the things they do is actually counseling. And when they can't take it, they then refer you to, I forgot the names of this, but they will refer you to counseling professionals that are linked to your NHS. So it's not like you pay for it or anything. I think the professionals probably know what I'm talking about, but I don't know the terms, sorry. But I'm just saying, even though I was grieving, I actually did my research, so I kind of knew what was there for me to tap into if need be. And so what I'm trying to say is, don't see it as, oh, it's just grieving. Prepare your mind. When you prepare your mind, it helps you cope better. It kind of actually gives you a coping mechanism as opposed to just freestyling and you then spiral out of control totally. So I think that would be a good cushion for anyone to tap into. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, DP. You're being honest, and honestly, when you speak, I feel like, are you here next to me? Literally, like you're speaking, you're saying what I would say, because I've been through it. So it's a personal experience for me. I mean, I would like Kendi to possibly jump in. We've got a lot going on in the chat, Kendi. So just pick a few things that you feel, some people have not had a chance to look at the chat, some people are not able to. Just pick a few things that you feel will be important as we wrap up, and maybe now reach out to anybody else who would like to contribute.
Yeah. Oh, there's a bit of an echo there. Yes, so I can see there's a lot that's been going on, and what I would do is suggest is that people take time to read the chat. There's a lot of content there. It was interesting, some of the documents that we spoke about as well, that you need to have at the very beginning. Your power of attorney document that is for medical and financial, just drawing attention to that as something really important. As Xina said, life insurance, which Gay has made clear for us, is quite different to you having a funeral insurance or having a funeral plan. So again, taking the time to know the differences between the two and being able to discuss with professionals as well. Having a will, Peter talked about this, or some kind of written form of your wishes, and letting people know what that is. I can see Judy has asked in the chat here about, the stigma that we do go through. That we deal with, that the stigma that we have around discussing end of life matters. And I think Xina and Peter and Gay have shared very well and very eloquently about how they have gone about it themselves by starting to talk about your own, and then that empowers, say for instance, your parents to know, to maybe be able to speak about what they would like as well. And it's important to also have the children involved. I think the whole, Peter gave a lot of information about repatriation, and that was a fantastic question, Lucy. I think a lot of people have benefited from that. There's a whole lot of documents, but he explained it so well, I'm not going to go over that again. And also, I can't remember all the documents. He has shared some information there as well. I think Gay has given us the document about your wishes and thinking about your funeral plan. I think it is there. I can see information on prepaid funeral plans, as well as the Leeds Bereavement Forum. So Xina has put a link there for you to go through and see what that is. And she's also given some information about bereavement support groups. Some of you are already in the process of grieving, but have not tapped into some of these, and they are there for you. I can see that there is a question from Cesarina Kirigwa, and the question says, does one need to have life insurance if you do not have dependents? And Xina was answering that question. So maybe if you can tell us a bit more about that, Xina.
Firstly, can I apologise for misspelling Cesarina's name?
Your bandwidth is very low, Xina. We can't hear you.
Spelling's correct. Yes, if you don't, life insurance is normally temporarily. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wait. Yeah. Great. So normally with life insurance, that's necessary if you have children and somebody else that will need to take care of your circumstances. If you don't have children, but you do have a funeral plan, there is no need to have life insurance.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Xina. And
Thank
I
you.
can see that Peter has also
Mm.
said that you don't necessarily have to have life insurance, but that he would recommend getting some kind of critical illness cover or income replacement cover, because you may have the kind of illness that may not kill you, but may leave you unable to work. So that's really important. I
Yeah.
think, you know, what I would say is a very, very big thank you to everybody who has participated. And perhaps, Lucy, it might be wise to see if our panelists have any final parting words, anything
Yeah.
that they would like to share with us before we go. This is a very, very meaty topic, and
Yeah.
I think there is still much more we could talk about, but thank you for putting all those links in the chat, all that information in the chat that people will find really useful, I am sure. So
Yeah. Can I just say, yeah, can I just say, you know, this is information that I think everybody should hear, if I'm honest. And within our community is something we don't like to talk about. But once we know how to go about it, maybe now we can even have those discussions. I think we've been informed, we've been educated, we've been empowered, we've listened to real life experiences. So once we have that now, we can now have those discussions now, you know, before we're having to run around and try and resolve things. It's a very loaded topic. It can be very emotional. Lady D, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your experience, and you know, and I know what it means and how it feels to lose a parent. And you seem to be coming out of it stronger and strong, and you've actually, even the legacy that you're doing for your mom, I'm sure she would be very, very proud of you. So well done for that. If you've got any parting words, just a few words before we wrap up.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that with regard to life insurance, you don't necessarily have to have it if you don't have dependents, but if your passing might be an issue for your parents, say, if they're still alive, or your siblings, they will have to then find the cost to cover your funeral. And it's really important that you do what you can not to make your passing an issue for other people who may not normally depend on you, but it would pass to them, your death would pass to them to take on the responsibility for covering. So really, yeah, life insurance is important. If you need to have it if you have a mortgage anyway, but you should really be covering your funeral in some way, not just for your children, but for your parents or people you might leave behind.
Thank you.
So I was going to say my last words. The pain never goes. So just in case you thought it was gonna go, prepare your mind. It doesn't go. However, the strength to keep going does grow, and that's what you should tap into in the process. And just like with life, the highs and the lows, of course, losing someone is a low. However, it's an avenue as well for us to tap into, to grow and have more power inside of us. So try and just, you know, instead of focusing on the negative, always try to just focus on the positive. And I think that's what will help you and your loved ones go through the journey of mourning, which, you know, to be honest, is a lifetime. But I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Peter, any words, any parting thoughts?
Unmute.
Unmute.
Oh my God, I have lost my... Xina, can you unmute your husband,
Yes,
please?
Thank you. Thank you. Just a final thought from me is just that for me, life is about living. It's about living and enjoying experiences with loved ones, with friends, family, children, parents. And what I always say to people is, you know, think about your end of life, plan your end of life, and then get on with your life and just have a great time. Because that, to me, is the most important thing, is just to go out there and enjoy yourself. And to, you know, people see me as a very serious person, but I am mostly quite serious, but I like to have a laugh and a joke and laugh at funny videos of people falling over. That's my vice mostly. But you know, it's really important to enjoy your life and to get out there and enjoy things and take part in things that you like to do, music, you know, sports, whatever it is. But just have some thought about the end of your life, write something down, plan it and put it in a drawer, and then get on with your life and enjoy it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Xina?
I think we've lost Xina, you know.
She's there.
No, I'm here.
Oh, right.
I had silenced my laptop, so I didn't get feedback from Peter, who's sitting at the other end of the dining table now. Okay, so what I would really like to say, first and foremost, is that we are here for you. Gooding Funeral Services put service right at the top of the list. I can say personally, the first funeral that I directed was my dad's funeral, and it had to be on point. It had to be the funeral befitting of a funeral director. I was a novice then, and I'm an expert now. So my funeral directing skills have come from the perspective of someone who's bereft. It's all about looking after bereaved people. If you guys, we don't do hard sell. I have to say we don't, never have and never will, because we've come into this profession through bereavement. We lost our dad. So that is the focus. It's how did we need to take care of ourselves when Daddy died? Because we were our funeral directors. We were the ones helping us. We need to make sure that when people come to us, we never forget that. We never forget how we came into this profession. My dad came into this profession because he wasn't happy with the way he was treated and the way his parents were treated when his parents died. So please understand that we really are here for you, and we are passionate. We're passionate about service. We are passionate about our clients. We are educated. We are qualified funeral directors. We are lifelong learners. We want to excel, and we have very high standards. And because we don't do hard sell, always remember, you can ask us anything. You can ask us absolutely anything. If that's too in your face, that's fine. Go to our website. Our website has received a lot of compliments because we put a lot of information on there. We try to make sure that it's easy for someone who's bereft to read. So it's in very simple language, but not patronizing language. It's very informative. It's clear pricing. We've got pricing on the website. You don't need to wonder what our price range is. It's there. Everything's there. We're very transparent, because the last thing you want to do is like a PhD in how to take care of someone when they've died. You need to know you can come to somebody you can trust and who isn't going to try and fleece you. And you know exactly what the score is when you go on their website. And you know that you're not going to be pinned down if you pick up the phone and call us to speak to us. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I wanted to say is definitely embrace life. Definitely embrace life. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Just embrace life. Have your loved ones as your celebrities. I call my husband Sir, and I'm a feminist. Because I'm not waiting for anybody else to call my husband Sir. He's a great guy. I'm going to call him Sir. I call my son Sir. I celebrate my sister. I tell her she's the best in the world, because she is. I'm not going to let her wonder how I feel about her. Do that in your family. You know, embrace them. Just glow with love wherever you walk. Be the positive energy when you walk into a room. Live life to the full, because this may be your only chance. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Xina. That's a lot. I'm trying to scribble everything you say down, but thank you very much. And Gay.
Well, mine's very brief. Firstly, I'm not entirely sure what Anne's question was, but I'm happy if she'd like to send her an email or a message to Kendi or to Lucy. We'd be happy to answer that.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that we, as I said before, we are very passionate about serving our community, the diaspora. We have a focus on tradition. We work with our families and with our clients. We don't tell people what they're going to do. We advise what's available and we work with them hand in hand all the way. And really that's it. I just want to thank everyone for listening and asking questions, and you know, we are here for you. So if you have any other questions, we're only a phone call away, email away. We've got our website. You can visit us at Gooding Funeral Services if you choose, and we're on Facebook and Twitter. So we're always contactable. And that's it. Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, thank you. I think it's been an amazing session. I think so much has been said, and as I said, the chat it keeps going. You know, there's a lot on the chat, but like Kendi said, some of this information we are happy to pass it on to you. You know, just send us an email. Kendi, what's the email again? I always forget that.
Late African Communities at
Yeah.
gmail.com.
Yeah.
I have put it in the chat. And
Yeah.
so if you have any questions, and those of you, of course, who know us personally, feel free to drop us a text as well. I think most of the people here are connected to us one way or the other, perhaps in some group chat somewhere. So feel free to send those messages to us, and we shall pass them on. And just before we finish, Lucy, I think the question Peter is trying to clarify from Anne, she's asking what happens if an entire family dies, so a mass death of the family here in the diaspora, and there is no other family. What do you do in that instant? So I don't know whether I can see we've gone over our time, and I'm mindful that our panelists also do have places to go and things to do. So maybe what I would recommend, guys, Peter, Gay, and Xina, is maybe when you've got time to put something together for Anne, and I will be happy to share it with her. Is that okay? Yeah. Cool. Fantastic. So I'll hand back to you, Lucy, to wind up. But thank you so much is what we can say from the Leeds African Communities Trust. Thank you so very much to the panelists and to Priye for sharing her really powerful story. And I hope we now can see the beginning. I know there are people who signed up and did not come, and there are people who wanted to come but were not brave enough. I hope that those who are here will be ambassadors to go out there and say, guys, this is a conversation we all need to be having. And I can say that I have been a client of the funeral home, of the Gooding Funeral Services, and I can say firsthand from experience the fantastic work that they do. It's important as well, I'll plug this, for us to support Black businesses, I think, and where we can work with people of African heritage, I think we should. But as the three of them said, they do not sell hard, and you do have a choice to go to whoever you feel comfortable with. This is not a Gooding Funeral Services hard sell pitch. This is just information to help you make the right choices for yourselves. But definitely do find people who are like them in spirit, who understand, who are compassionate, who are supportive, and who will help you go through this process without looking for personal gain and benefit. So thank you very much, and over to you, Lucy.
Okay, just to wrap up, all I can say is from everything I've had today, there's few words that I can say is plan and live life to the full. I think that sums it up for me. Plan for the inevitable and just live life to the full. Go out there, fall in love, dance, enjoy the sunshine, have a family if you want to, cook and bake and everything else. Plan and live life to the full. And I just want to say thank you so much for everybody. This has been so amazing, and I'm sure we will share the feedback that we get from people. I'm sure we will get feedback, but we will share it with you guys. But you guys are amazing, and thank you for taking your time out. For everybody else who's here, who's joined us, we believe you've been empowered, informed and pass on this webinar. It's recorded, so you will be able to pass it on to your loved ones. And thank you. And that's it. I think we've made good time. And thank you so much. And God bless. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just leave it on for a few minutes, and people can leave as they wish, but feel free to just take some notes or whatever. Just look at the chat as we end. Yeah.